Frankis. I'm Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Surinder Deol. And Surinder is a banker, used to be a banker, now he's an author. He got a lot of books that he's going to share with you. Welcome to our show. Thank you very much.
Mr. Islam.
You're most welcome. Tell me a little bit about your background. What brought you to the United States? You crossed the Atlantic Ocean to come to this shining city upon a hill.
Yes, it's a long story, but I'll cut it short.
Please do so.
I was born in a village in Punjab, and my entire education, early education, was also in Punjab. The high achievement of my educational career was that I stood first in my master's degree examination, and as a result, I won the university gold medal. So that was quite different from my earlier academic career because I was not a top student. But there was something that happened in my life, and that.
So you came to the United States as a student?
No, I didn't come at that time. I actually became a lecturer. Then I got a job in State Bank, and then I went to Reserve Bank. But I got a visa in 1970 to come to U.S. At that time, I decided not to come because I had a very good job in India. Then in 1983, World Bank offered me a job, and that brought me to the U.S.
So you have been a banker. You work for State Bank of India, Reserve Bank of India, and the World Bank. Tell me a little bit about your experience as a banker.
Yeah, I worked in banks, but some of the other, I chose a role for myself, which was that of a trainer or a teacher. Because when I joined State Bank of India, I actually didn't like the job very much. It was a routine banking job, and you do the same thing every day. So I found a role for myself by helping people who are appearing in bankers exams by becoming a teacher and a coach.
Oh, okay.
So that role actually stayed with me, and when I joined the World Bank, I was member of the Economic Development Institute, which was part of World Bank, and the objective of that was to educate our clients. And in my entire 25 years of banking career with the World Bank, I was actually more in training, teaching, leadership role.
Very good. So now from the World Bank, and you published 4 books, and you brought those books, and I want to share with my audience. Would you be kind enough to give it to me? Tell me, so what inspired you? What motivated you to become an author, and a transition being a banker to an author? And I want to share with the author about this is a wonderful book, Endless Life. The title is wonderful. And then The Summit, and then A Moment in the Universe. Boy, this guy writes a lot of book. And then the Path of the Devotional Meditation, excuse me, and called JAPG. Perhaps I couldn't pronounce it correctly, but he will correct me anyway. And my most favorite book is The Treasure, which is this Noor Jahan?
No, it's the picture of a princess.
Princess. A Mughal princess.
Mughal princess.
And I was there when he was signing this book. So it's a wonderful book. So I wanted to ask you, congratulations for writing so many books, and you're indeed a great author. So share with you a little bit about your experience being an author.
You know, there are some ideas that stay with you all the time, and you develop those ideas. But when you have a day job, you are working 9 to 5, even more than that, there's not enough time to do any writing. So when I retired from the World Bank, and I also gave up on consulting, I chose for myself a path that is more a creative path, putting into words what I already felt most of the time. So this is how I started writing books, because I thought that was the best use of my time.
So what are the major themes of the book? And I want to talk about this book, which I love, and I had an opportunity to read it a little bit, glance at it a little bit, understand a little bit, and obviously it is indeed a true treasure.
Okay.
So, and this is the translations of the Mirza Ghalib's.
Diwan Ghalib.
Urdu
Ghalib
Diwan.
Actually was a very famous poet. He's a very famous poet of India, and he lived in the middle part of the 19th century. And that was a very important time in India's history because we had a transition from the Mughal dynasty to the British rule. So he wrote on different topics. He's mostly considered a romantic poet, but he's also a mystical poet, and he's also a philosopher poet. So he wrote in Persian, he wrote in Urdu. His Urdu Diwan actually is very popular in India because people can read Urdu. Not many people can read Persian. So Diwan-e-Ghalib, his Urdu Diwan, I translated, and that's Straya. This book is Diwan-e-Ghalib in American free verse.
Mirza Ghalib, as you know, was a brilliant. He was not only the Persian poet, but he also uplifted the soul of the Urdu literature and learning. And he was the time of the twilight of the Mughal Empire,
Right.
as you suggested. My question to you, why Mirza Ghalib? Why not the, what about the other poets that seem to stand out? And what is so unique
Yeah.
about Mirza Ghalib?
Actually, if you look at the history of Urdu literature, there was only one great poet who came before Ghalib. His name was Mir Taqi Mir. He lived about...
What about Amir Khusro? Rumi?
Yeah, but they fall in a very different category. We
I-
call them mystics.
Okay, mystic Sufis?
Yeah, they are Sufi. They are in the Sufi tradition.
Okay.
But when we come to a poet who kind of combines mysticism with romanticism, then we come to Mir Taqi Mir. He was a great poet. But Ghalib was only 10 years old when Mir Taqi Mir passed away. So after that, there were few other poets in that century. Momin Khan Momin is another, Zauq is another. But Ghalib stands out for 2 or 3 reasons. So one reason is that part of Ghalib's poetry is very simple. You know, there are couplets, if I just kind of paraphrase them.
Please do so. I'd love to
You
hear
know,
that.
I never expected my beloved to come to my home, but she came, and it's a miracle of God. And I look at her and look at my home, because my home is so humble. Now, those are the kind of thoughts which are not complicated at all. And you go to India, ordinary people without much of education, tonge wala, rickshaw wala.
They are recite Ghalib's poem?
Yeah,
Poet?
they can recite some of his couplets, and that's why he's. But the easy part is like a hook. You know, when you get into Ghalib and you think he's easy to start with, but he's not easy in its entirety, because he uses a lot of Persian words, and his Urdu is very sophisticated. He actually created a new language which was not there before him. Then there are other few things about Ghalib which are very important. One is he's very creative, very imaginative, because some of the metaphors and similes which he used, they were never used before. The problem with the Urdu ghazal today is that people use husn-o ishq, all these topics, but they seem very repetitive. There is not much there. There's not much newness. But Ghalib brought something which was totally new and very refreshing.
But Mirza Ghalib was a Muslim.
Yes.
And he was a controversial figure because he
Yeah.
didn't subscribe to the faith as much as people liked him to do.
Right.
So obviously he drank.
Yes.
And
He
he'll-
loved red wine.
Was he really a Muslim?
Yeah, that's somewhat a controversial question.
I believe he was. Obviously he subscribed to the faith.
Yeah, one of his early biographers named Hali, he actually paid some attention to this question. And he says he's a Muslim because there are 2 things he qualifies. One is he has belief in Prophet, and he has a very loving, affectionate relationship with Prophet's family. And secondly,
He was a Sayyid. He was a descendant of Prophet Muhammad's family, wasn't he?
Oh no, he came from Turkish.
Origin. Yeah, you're absolutely right. He was a Turkish extraction.
Yeah, Turkish extraction. And second thing is that his view of God is the same as in Quran. That there is only one God and the supreme God. So from that point of view, you can say he's a Muslim. But as far as the rituals are concerned, you know, he never said his 5-time prayers. He never had fasting during Ramadan, and he never went for a Hajj. So he was more liberal. He was more, I would say, modernist. He was a secularist, and he was very proud of the fact that he was a secularist.
Who inspired Ghalib to be a poet?
That is something, again, very interesting. As I said, he came from a Turkish
Extraction.
extraction.
And he was born not too far from Agra, according to
in
your book.
Akbarabad.
In-
It's,
yeah.
His grandfather came to India during the reign of Shah Alam. And this entire family had a history of warriors, you know. Actually, it is said that he came from a tribe from Turkey where the tradition was that when the father passed away, he gave all his property to the daughter and he left his sword for the son. That means the message to the son was, okay, you are going to go and fight it out and make a living. So his uncle, his father actually died in a battle. So this is a very, very different background, and he writes in one of his letters, you know, this fighting, carrying a sword is not, I'm not made for that. So somehow or the other, he was more inspired by literature, by poetry. And there was a poet at that time, his name was Bedel, and he was his family came from Afghanistan, but Bedel was born in Patna. He wrote in Persian, so he was his favorite poet as he was growing up, and he had great influence on him. So you can say that he was self-inspired. It had nothing to do with his family.
He was a brilliant man.
Yes, he was. He was in many ways.
And as you probably know, that the Urdu is dying in India.
Mm-hmm.
What do you and all of us need to do to preserve and protect and promote Urdu?
Yeah.
In India and for that matter all over the world.
Yeah.
And Urdu, if you think about it, is the combination of a Sanskrit, it's a real Indian language,
Yeah, it is real.
and a Turkish and some parts of other languages as well. It is a real, the language really born in India and inspired by Indians. So what do you need to do? And you are being a poet, which you, and you're serving Urdu literature very well. Tell me a little bit about the fact that how do you preserve, protect, and promote Urdu language in India, and for that matter, all over the world.
Yeah. See, something also unfortunate happened with the partition of India. That is, somehow or the other, we have associated the language with the religion.
Which was wrong.
Which is totally wrong, completely wrong, because if you look at the history of Urdu literature, Hindus and Muslims and even non-Hindus and non-Muslims, everybody participated in the development of this language. So we had great poets who belonged to different religious denominations.
Well, there were a lot of Hindu people who subscribed to, forget the Faiz Ahmad Faiz was a great, and also there was a fellow from Gorakhpuri, Farooq Gorakhpuri. He was not a Muslim. He was one of the best.
Yeah,
and this is when I was a young 10-year-old kid in India.
Yeah.
He was the best.
Yeah, he was actually. He was actually, according to Jigar Muradabadi, he said Urdu produced two great poets. One was Ghalib and second was Farooq Gorakhpuri. That is the assessment of Jigar Muradabadi.
And there were so many of the people of the Indian heritage who did not subscribe to the Muslim faith, and they loved the Urdu, and they promoted the Urdu language. So what we should do to promote that?
I think one thing which has happened is that even in Urdu-speaking areas of UP and Bihar, even in Muslim majority districts, there is only option for students is to take Hindi as their language. So they are not familiar with the Urdu script. Now, Urdu script, as you know, is one of the most beautiful scripts. Actually, when I write, I feel I am creating a work of art. It's so beautiful.
But you're a commodity.
Yeah, but we are losing that, and that's very unfortunate. But part of Urdu new literature in Urdu is being produced in Devanagari script now. So script is an issue, and I don't know what is the best solution for that. But I would say as long as Bollywood is there, as long as they go on producing good songs in Urdu language.
But if you think about that, Muhammad Rafi, Shakil Badayuni, Azmi, Kafi Azmi, they were and there were so many Urdu poetry. They were brilliant.
Yeah.
They gave so much to India, Indian music, that we all owe them a sense of gratitude.
Yeah, sure. That's what we remember. If you go back to 50s and 60s and
Yes.
70s, the most beautiful part of movies was the poetical works of poets like Sahir, Kafi, Hasrat Japuri, and Majru Sultanpuri. They brought so much of literary touch to whatever they were doing. Unfortunately, that is dying because the new poets who write for Hindi cinema, they don't come from a literary background. But my hope is that some Urdu poets will continue to write, and that will be like giving some popularity to Urdu language.
So that's your fondest hope and expectation that you, as an author, would try your best to promote the language and to make sure you preserve and protect it.
Yeah. Another thing which I'm trying to do is when I decided to translate Ghalib into modern English, is to make people aware of the richness of the Urdu literature. When people all over the world, they read good works, poetical works, prose works, which are translated into other languages, I think that also gives a big boost to the language.
What do you think of the Majaz Lakhnavi? When I grew up, by the way, I grew up in Aligarh,
Right,
which has one of the best university in the world, Aligarh Muslim University. But I came here when I was very young,
Yeah.
and I was taught in Urdu.
Yeah.
It has never slipped from my mind. It is still very much alive in my spirit, my thoughts, in my mind. So, what do you think of the Majaz Lakhnavi? I mean,
He was a very attractive poet, and as you mentioned Aligarh, I'm told when he was in Aligarh, he was the hero. He was the hero of all the girls and boys at that time.
he was good.
And
He died so young.
and that's very unfortunate. He died young, and he was a great romantic poet. But more than a romantic poet, he was also a revolutionary poet, and he touched on some of the social issues like women's role in society, which was a very touchy issue at that time, and not many people dared to even talk about that.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah, he was much ahead of his time. But unfortunately, I think he suffered from some issues for which there could have been medical care. But as you know, in India, we don't pay attention to those things. And he died a very painful death, it was.
I want you to recite one Ghalib, and I will recite one Majaz Lakhnavi, and then we'll end the show. And this goes back to 45 years ago when I was a student in Aligarh. ये रात हंस के कहती है कि किसी में खाने में चल, फिर किसी लाला शहनाज रुख के काशाने में चल, ये अगर मुमकिन नहीं तो ऐ दोस्त किसी वीराने में चल.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now,
Can you recite one Ghalib for me?
I made a resolve, Mr. Islam, that I want to read in English.
Please.
Yeah, because reason is we are so used to listening to Ghalib in Urdu.
Yes.
That we have to kind of
Please.
accept the fact that he wrote beautiful poetry which can be enjoyed. So I just opened my
Please do so.
Open my book at some
Yeah.
page, I don't know. I wanted you to wait for me before you died. Since you made your choice, you will have to live alone for some days more. And this is the couplet he wrote because his adopted son died very young, Arif. So he wrote a ghazal in his memory, and that's what he said about him.
Well, thank you very much, Surinder, for what you're doing, not only for this country, but for the future generation, trying to preserve and protect a beautiful language, which is very important to India, for that matter, all over the world. So thank you very much for doing so, and thank you for your leadership, and thank you for being such an inspiration, a constant source of inspiration to all of us in the audience as well as to the world.
Thank you, Mr. Islam. It's a great honor for me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. This is Frank Islam, wishing you a great week.